Hey, I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter, and I'm here today with Gerhard Schwantner, Selling Power, magazine, but Sales Conference 3.0. And hey, we have with us today Victor Antonio, who has written a new book, and believe me, he takes artificial intelligence and puts it into layman's terms. So, Victor, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself, and Gerhard, kick it off then.
Thank you guys for having me. Victor Antonio, author, speaker, sales trainer, and glad to be on the show.
And the book is called Ex Machina.
Sales Ex Machina, how artificial intelligence is changing the world of selling.
Right. So what qualifies you, a speaker, to write about artificial intelligence? Because you have so much natural intelligence.
Yeah. So the joke behind the joke for this question is that's one of the first things Gerhard asked me, like when I told him I written this book. He's like, what qualifies you? So the background is, most people don't know that I have an electrical engineering background and an MBA. And I started my life in the engineering world. And so I worked for Honeywell. And so I started working in their undersea systems division. So if you ever see the movie Hunt for Red October, you know, the Russian sub, the US sub, the torpedo system used on that was the Mach 46, and the next generation was the Mach 50. I worked on the Mach 50 generation of that torpedo in that movie. That's where I learned everything about, at that point, really was more expert system, rule-based systems, but they were artificial intelligence systems, you know, thinking machines. And the way it worked is that when you drop the torpedo into the water, it would actually just go into a circular pattern, the sonar system would ping, and then it would actually do a pattern recognition, and the expert system, the AI system, would do classification of objects underwater with the objective of finding the enemy sub. So I understand it from a systems level, and I began to understand things from actual component level, and I guess everything in between. And so I had to do a lot of writing of software code just to do a lot of testing for those two type of systems.
Can you define artificial intelligence for us?
The closer we can replicate or mimic a human being, that's what people consider artificial intelligence. And the question always is, well, what does that mean? You know, what does it approximate artificial intelligence? When you say mimic, how close does it approximate? And in the book, I talk about the conversation that's going on and on about the point of singularity, right? When a human being can't tell the difference of whether they're talking to a computer or a human being, you've reached a certain level of, you know, computer knowledge, artificial intelligence. Singularity is when, you know, now we're beyond just the rudimentary cognitive processing of giant algorithms and, you know, language learning, that I can now be creative and come up with things that maybe the human couldn't think of. And so, you know, I mean, people put it out there at, 2050, you know, as far as when we'll reach that point of singularity. But to me, artificial intelligence is how closely can we mimic what a person does in a given situation. And I think the biggest thing that hinders us as human beings is confirmation bias. We want to see what we want to see. I want to believe that deal is going to go through. I want to believe every deal in my pipeline is going to go, and that every interaction I had with the customer was a home run. That's what I want to believe. A machine can sit back and go, no, remove all that emotional element out of the actual decision-making process. And I think that's where a machine will, I think augment is the word I used in the book. A machine will augment us today.
What do you see as the practical applications in sales that are available right now?
The low-hanging fruit is obviously forecasting, right? But forecasting not only sales in the pipeline. So let's look at forecasting and sales, but also what markets to enter. Maybe what products to develop. When we look at inventory management, you know, what raw materials should we be ordering? The one I'm excited about in the future, and we're going to write about it in the second book, is dynamic pricing. I think that is just going to be, you know, how do you find the optimal price for a given product in a given market for a given market segment at a given time? Imagine restaurants. You've been to those restaurants where they have the iPads already set up, right? Imagine for a moment that they get the idea to do dynamic pricing. Think about it. In the morning, not many people want to stop by and eat. Let's lower the price. You know, a couple of strokes on the keyboard, the machine will tell you when to lower the price. As the flights start coming in, somewhere around 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, you know, that's the big bump in the curve. Let's move the price up a little bit. It's all about maximizing price. So I think that's a great place to actually exploit this in terms of selling.
Salespeople are afraid of pricing. In other words, what I see happening is salespeople give away so much money because they're afraid the customer won't buy.
Great point.
That's where I see artificial intelligence coming in. Then people say, well, you could never bring dynamic pricing into my B2B sales situation. And I go, wait a minute. Isn't that what the airlines are doing right now? I mean, the airlines have been a master at this.
I think the airline industry should be like the perfect prototype when you look at dynamic pricing and how humans, we as human beings, consumers, accept the fact that prices change. The reason I think we don't like doing dynamic pricing is because it's too complex for this piece of gray matter to handle. Let's be honest, right? We can't do it. We can't manage it. And we can't go back to spreadsheets and try to cross matrix, right? If a machine can do that for you, I think that's where I think we'll reduce that fear. I think is the question you're really asking me. How do we reduce that fear of pricing dynamically?
And it's always what happens whenever a salesperson gets the ability to adjust price. What do? They adjust price.
Yeah.
But if I can take this away from, they never adjust it down.
Yeah, they never adjust up.
Up, they always go down. So if I can take that away from them and give them the confidence that we're going to maximize revenue and maximize profit, and at the same time, maximize value. Because remember, price and value correlate together.
Right.
I think that in and of itself is worth the price of entry for AI into the sales arena.
In the book, Victor, you also talk about emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence. How do the two align and how do they integrate so you can make better decisions?
How many deals were lost because we misinterpreted an email? You know, sometimes people respond with a short answer because they're busy or they're in a conference call, right? And maybe something. And so what I love about what's happening now with some of this new software that's out there is that when you get something from somebody text-wise, you can actually analyze this and say, you know, what's the emotion? What's the sentiment? What's the intent behind what was being said? But what's brilliant about it is that, you know, companies like, I think I mentioned Phrasee in there, is that you can actually type a response and it basically helps you with your emotional intelligence. Like, dude, you're not being sympathetic enough. You know what I mean? Hey, you need to tone that down. Imagine if that was our gatekeeper before we send anything out. I think it would be, I don't know how many deals we win, but I bet you we win a few more.
Are you saying that a lot of salespeople fall victims to their own unconscious expectations when they come off a client visit and they feel high?
Oh, I think so. I mean, we've all been there. Come on. I mean, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, can we trust people to gauge with absolute certainty? Like if you're saying this deal is going to close, wouldn't it be nice if the machine would validate that for you, right? Because you can then take that to management and says, we need to put more resources. Not only do I think it's a go, the machine says it's a go. So I think, again, that's why I say it's augmenting.
You have a chapter on Salesforce.com in this book.
I see them as a more in touch company with what's going on in the market, specifically within the sales realm, because that's their focus. And I think they're able to develop applications. They got a pulse on the market. They know what we need. And I think everything you're starting to see with Einstein is just going to blossom into more sophisticated algorithms that we'll be able to use and bolt in easier.
So you are going to speak at Sales 3.0 on June 19th in Philadelphia.
Super excited about it. Thank you for having me. So I'm super excited to do this. And on the topic of artificial intelligence, I think, you know, one of the things I want to talk about, and it's really something you already brought up, Gerhard, which is, you know, what are the applications of this? You know, and I've highlighted 10 areas where AI can impact the business from a revenue standpoint and from a cost reduction standpoint or expanding market share type of things. And so that's one of the things I'm going to try to do is talk about that, so that people walk out of there with an understanding of, yeah, here's what machine learning is, here's what deep learning is, here's how it applies to you. But realistically, let's pull back on the joystick a little bit and what is realistic that you can implement today? Because I think that is the biggest challenge.
When I read the book, and thank you for sending me a copy, Victor.
Thank you.
I took away, this was a very simplistic version of understanding what AI is in English for a salesperson.
And there is an imperative for every sales manager out there that's listening that you want to engage with that as soon as you can, because the world is going through a digital transformation, and AI and machine learning and cognitive computing is driving all this. So we're moving from 2.0 to 3.0, and 2.0 was all about moving online, and 3.0 is all about taking advantage of that extra intelligence by enriching the data and by allowing you to focus on what really counts, so the human relationship, but guided by the machine.
All you gotta do is type in sales AI or sales machine learning, and you'll come across companies who have maybe little applications. And by the way, We're already using it. If you notice that when you get a message on your phone from somebody, it gives you 3 options to reply with. That's machine learning at a low level, but it's machine learning. It knows what the text was, and you can hit any of these 3 options. So there's so many things people can do now without spending a lot of money and be more effective.
And by the way, I want to tell everybody, go to Victor Antonio's YouTube channel. It's probably the best content store that you can find anywhere on the web.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.